Let's go. Okay, what is going on, ladies and gents? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the number one student podcast in the world, the Student Podcast. Today, actually, interestingly, I actually looked at my YouTube. So there's a thing called vidIQ, which basically generates statistics. I can't even say that. Statistics from YouTube. And I think they do it on Instagram as well. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, it's an app that you can download that is like a plugin for YouTube. And it actually gives you like statistics of, say, like the top YouTube channels. Say if you search the word, say I searched today the student podcast, or I searched student podcast because I wanted to see what other student podcasts were out there. And actually when it comes up, it says top creator, Thomas Rowntree. So when I say we're the number one student podcast in the world, it is official that we're actually the number one student podcast on YouTube, or I'm the top creator for a student podcast on YouTube, which is pretty cool. Obviously not to like float my own boat, but I was pretty happy with that. We've only 7 episodes in. I'm really happy with the feedback. Everyone's really enjoying it. Obviously, I'm really happy with how it's going. And yeah, I'm really happy that I've transitioned into a podcast. I still am doing my YouTube videos, but obviously, like I've mentioned in previous episodes, I don't have too much time at the moment to be doing too many YouTube videos. So the podcast kind of gives me a little bit of breathing space, gives me some time to chill out a little bit more, spend more time with my friends, my family, and obviously spend more time on doing work and kind of balancing things much better. So just sitting here for an hour or so, just doing this, and then I can edit up for like an hour or whatever, rather than like filming over a couple of days, which takes much longer, and it kind of consumes a lot more time. So I'm really happy with the podcast. I'm really happy with the feedback. So thank you. As always, I know I say this every episode, but I obviously do appreciate your guys' support. It's been unbelievable. If you want me to cover any topics, literally let me know. I'm happy to cover anything. This isn't just a student podcast. This is kind of just a podcast where anyone can relate. I want anyone to be involved. I want everyone to be involved. I want to cover all kinds of different topics, from like football to university topics to obviously architecture, anything. Just let me know. I will cover it. I'm going to try and get some really interesting guests on in the next few weeks. Getting guests is actually more difficult than I thought it would be. Obviously, getting people to come round to your house to do an episode in your bedroom. I might try and be a little bit more kind of versatile and take, maybe if I do get a good guest, I can go potentially go to them, take my mic and obviously with me, and I can do that very easily. But yeah, I want to get some really good guests on, to get some more experiences, to get some more topics involved, and really make it a really good all-round student podcast for you guys, to get lots of different information, lots of different experiences from different people. So if you want me to do a podcast with anyone in particular, just let me know down below. Obviously, within my range, I'm not a big YouTuber, so just pick some people that maybe would be interesting to do one. Even if I can do like a Skype call with them, I reckon that will work anyway. So in terms of the podcast, I feel like I'm getting to that point where I want to start investing in some things. I want to start making it a proper set. I want to start making it a proper studio, because obviously currently right now, I've just thrown up a couple of pictures up there. I've put a plant in the background just to make it a little bit more kind of homely and a little bit more comfortable. I'm going to sit here with like my coffee. I want it to be a very chilled out podcast. And I was thinking maybe getting some more lights, getting some like one of them rings. I don't know what they're called, but like, you know, the girls, like the makeup girls, they've got one of them ring lights. And I was thinking of getting one of them to kind of improve the lighting in here. Because at the moment, my only form of lighting really is this big window here. But obviously on a dark day, or maybe if I want to film a podcast in the evening, it's not ideal. And I've got this light here, which I feel like it's very orange, and I'm not quite sure on the lighting at the moment. So I might invest in some lighting and get some like proper lighting. And I was also thinking of having like a backdrop. So maybe like hang something from the ceiling. That'd be quite cool potentially, with obviously the student podcast in the background, or even having like a big sign here. So maybe like a 3D sign that glows up or something. Just let me know if you've got any ideas of how I can improve the podcast. I'm thinking of investing in another mic, just so when we do have the guests, it's not as complicated trying to figure out the audio. And obviously we don't have to both sit kind of really close to the mic. I can obviously set it up a little bit differently. That might work better. And also with my camera, it's got a 16-minute limit on it. So it's a Canon G7X Mark II. If you guys know anything about cameras, why does it have a 16-minute limit on it? I'm really not sure why. So pretty much every 16 minutes I have to stop and start the camera. which is quite annoying because sometimes I run over and then obviously the audio doesn't match up with the video, and therefore on the video it's got like a period of time where it's just black, which actually happened in the last episode with Cam. So if you guys are if you're tech savvy or whatever, please let me know how I can go around that. Whether it's me investing in a new camera, I'm happy to do that after saving up for a while. But yeah, I want to invest in that. I want to invest in the podcast. I do really feel like it is a fantastic thing for me to do. I'm really happy with how I started, and I really just want to kind of push it further and take it that step further, and really push myself out there and really make it kind of like a podcast people really want to listen to, and actually make it the #1 student podcast in the world, because that could be true. That might not be true. We don't know, and we'll never know. So obviously in my last episode I spoke about how I've been struggling with sleep, etc., managing stress, managing university. By the way, this episode is kind of going to be me giving you like some updates over the past few weeks, because I've had a lot going on the past few weeks and I thought it'd be interesting for me to cover that. And then I've got a load of questions. Like, you guys have been amazing with the questions this time. If you're not following my Instagram, get at me. It's at Tom Rowe with 2 W's. That is where I generally ask all the questions, where you guys... Well, I don't ask the questions. I put up the poll for you guys to ask me the questions, and generally I don't get too many, but today we've got a lot, and some of them are juicy, some of them are interesting. I'm not sure if I'm even going to be able to answer a few of them, because they are juicy, like they're proper juicy. I did ask for some juicy ones, but we've got some good ones this time. But yeah, last time I spoke about my sleep and how I've been really struggling with getting sleep. I've been struggling for the past 5-6 weeks now. It's been a long time. But I've finally come to the conclusion that obviously my sleep is unbelievably important. I bang on to everyone about how sleep is the most important thing. It gives you your energy. It makes you much more productive throughout the day. Makes you feel so much better within yourself. You're obviously not tired throughout the day. But for me recently, I've been absolutely knackered all day, every day. I haven't been able to focus on things. Like, I'll look at something and my eyes are kind of like blurry. I'm not very productive. I'm not in a routine. And I've been a bit all over the place, to be honest. In the past week or so, I've been traveling a lot. So if you guys are following my Instagram, you'd know that I've been in Sheffield. I've obviously been in Birmingham. I went back home to Nottingham. I then went on a flight to Amsterdam, and then I came back from Amsterdam on Monday, and then I went to London yesterday. So I've been all over the place. And finally I can kind of sit down, relax, stay in one place for a while, and just get on with my work, get myself into a decent routine. In the past few days my sleep's actually been much better, because I've actually stopped looking at my phone really late at night, and I've actually started reading a book. So I'm actually reading, it's called 59 Seconds by Richard Wiseman, which is a fantastic book. If I'm being completely honest, I haven't read a book since I was probably about 5. I used to read when I was younger. I used to read obviously like the funny Cows in Action, stuff like that when I was younger. But ever since I've tried reading, but it's never really been my thing. I've always been into like watching documentaries and kind of learning through like visual, through film, through YouTube, etc. But I've really recently tried to push myself with reading books, because I feel like for me to be a top architect and for me to be kind of take that step further of where I want to go in life, I want to have my own company, etc. For me to gather as much information and knowledge as possible, I do need to start reading, because that's kind of like my next step, and I really do need to push myself to read. So that's what I've been doing recently before bed, and it's been working. Like, it's been really working. I don't know what it is, but whenever I read a book, I feel really tired. So I'll probably read. I know this sounds stupid. Like, I don't read much at all, but if I'm reading, I'll probably get about 5 or 10 pages in, and I'm knackered. Like, I'm trying to stay awake. My eyes are like blurry. I don't know if that's obviously me having a lack of sleep at the moment. But it's amazing, obviously, before going to bed. I'm just sat there reading a book. Sometimes I'll even sit there with these headphones in, and I'll actually play like rain music. So obviously there's studies to show that rain music and like waterfalls and that kind of stuff actually makes you sleepy, because it's quite like relaxing. So what I've been doing is sitting with my book, with my headphones in, listening to rain music, and it's been working a treat. I've been falling asleep pretty quickly. I'm still having a couple issues with like waking up in the night, etc. But all in all, I'm feeling much better. I'm feeling much better now that I'm back in Birmingham, and I can kind of just get into a solid routine, because routine is something that I always bang on about. I'm not going to go into it again. But yeah, so really happy with where I'm at the moment. I've got an idea for my project now, which I'm really happy with. So I'm kind of going to grab that and run forward with that, which I'll explain a little bit more later on in the podcast. But yeah, really happy with how things are going at the moment. It is a point in time where I really do need to get myself in a routine. I do need to make sure that I'm getting a lot of sleep, because this is like the time of year in third year where it's really starting to pile on. So the first few weeks was kind of just getting us into it, getting to into the swing of third year and how much work there's going to be. But now we've been given like our proper assignments, and this is where we need to really start working hard, and really push forward, really start learning a lot of things. We'll just punch the microphone then. And yeah, so last week I had 3 interim reviews. So I had an interim review for my my studio project, my cultural context project, and my tech project. So my studio project, you probably would have seen on my Instagram, me posting a picture of me and my work. That went really, really well. I was really happy with my feedback. My issue now is that because I did so much work for that, it's where to go now. So I looked into population, I looked into visual population of cars and people. So what I actually did was I spent 12 hours on site. I think I explained this in the last video. I spent 12 hours on site, and I pretty much recorded all the people and the cars within that 12 hours, and I mapped it. However, going further from there, I think I'm going to move into like movement. My tutor kind of suggested me to move into movement. But however, I don't want to look at movement as just a general topic. I really want to dive into a specific kind of part of movement, and something that I can really kind of test the waters with, make it quite conceptual, and really test the idea of movement. So what I'm currently thinking of going into is like collisions. So points of collisions, and basically areas where people could potentially socially interact. So for example, a couple collision points that I'd point out is like a bus stop. So when people are getting on and off a bus, obviously people are colliding. This is an interaction point. Maybe if you're going into a pub and there's one entrance, obviously if you're going into a pub and you might bump into someone as they're coming out, that is a collision. Maybe in a public space, and there's like benches or something, and you're trying to walk around the benches, you may collide into someone. That is another form of social collision. So for me, that is kind of what I want to dive into. Obviously, they're my ideas. That's obviously not specifically, that's not like completely correct, if you know what I mean. But they're the ideas that I've got at the moment. And that's kind of what I'm going to explore later on in this project, which is pretty cool. And I'm quite excited that I finally got like an idea, which is really good. So last week, like I mentioned, I had 3 interim reviews. The other one was with cultural context and tech. So tech was, we basically had a case study in Oxford, and we had to go and analyse the case study. And because we're looking at daylighting, we had to analyse the daylighting, we had to measure the daylighting and everything. We had to do a digital model and then pretty much gather daylighting information from the model and compare it to our information that we got from site, and just to test how successful our digital model is, etc. We put together a presentation, and that was really good. It went really smoothly. And this is going to lead me to one like piece of advice I'd give for you guys within presentations is 100% try and be as confident as possible, whether or not. So for me, I perform much better in a presentation if I'm confident about my work. I know the ins and outs of my work. I know that if someone's going to ask me a question, I know the answer to that question because I've been working really hard on this project. So for me, if you are confident in a presentation, that definitely comes across. They'll look at you and think like, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. He has obviously invested a lot of time into this project, and that'll instantly kind of give them a perspective that you know what you're talking about. You know that your work is good. So one piece of advice I'd give for reviews is definitely be as confident as possible. Obviously, to a certain point, you don't want to be like prancing around, acting like a showman in front of everyone, but you do just want to be really confident. You want to say some really bold statements throughout your work. And when they ask you questions, be really confident with the back, be quite, just test the judges. I know that might be quite controversial, but do really test the people that are kind of analysing you and asking the questions, and just be as confident as humanly possible. So obviously last week was Halloween. So weirdly enough, basically what happened was my mate was having a party in Sheffield, so he's at Sheffield Hallam University, and I know a lot of people in Sheffield because somehow everyone from back home ended up in Sheffield, and so my friend had a Halloween party. I said I wasn't going to go because I'd had so much work on with this London project, etc. But literally on Thursday, so I'd been at uni all day. I'd finished uni at about 5:30. Me and a couple of mates went out for a few drinks. And after one pint, I looked at my phone. I'd had a few Snapchats from my mates who were obviously going to the party, and I was back in Birmingham when I was saying like, oh no, I can't go. I'd had one pint and I thought, you know what? I'm going to be spontaneous and I'm going to hop on a train right now. So we're out for drinks till about 8 o'clock. My train was at 8:30. I literally ran home, jumped in the house, put like a jumper on or something, put a spare, I didn't even take a bag. That's a good point actually. I didn't even take a bag. Hopped in an Uber, got on a train, ended up in Sheffield, literally like an hour later. Got there and I was like, right, let's do it then. So literally, it was a very spontaneous night for me. I don't normally kind of do that kind of, I don't normally kind of do that kind of thing. I'm normally quite organised and I plan things out. I tell myself, no, you can't go because you got all this work on and it's not a good idea for you to do that. But I'd finished my uni work for London and I thought, you know what? I'm going to hop on a train. I'm going to go to Sheffield. So I went to Sheffield, went to this house party, 100+ people there. Amazing party. Always good to see the lads. So I feel like this is probably going to be the last time before Christmas that I see them because of just workload and everyone being back at uni, etc. It's obviously quite difficult having friends that are all at different universities. Obviously when we're so spread out, so I've got some in Manchester, I've got some in Leeds, I've got some in Nottingham, got some in Sheffield. So it's quite difficult to obviously see each other all together, especially when we've got all of us got so much work on. So it was really good to go over to Sheffield for the Halloween party. I ended up staying at this person's house with like 10 other people. Ended up sleeping on the floor, which was not ideal. Had like 3 hours sleep and then I hopped on a train and went back to Birmingham. So yeah, that was fun. Also for me, I feel like Halloween is a really dodgy one in terms of costumes. So I've never really been a big Halloween person. I've never really pushed myself to do like a really like crazy costume. And to be honest, I didn't really think about it and I didn't really think that this party everyone would be dressed up. But obviously on my way on the train, I kind of rang my mate and I was like, yo, what are you wearing tonight? And he was like, oh, everyone's in fancy dress. And I was thinking, oh, no, I'm going to be the only person at this party not in fancy dress. And I was thinking, what am I going to do? So when I got to like the pre-drinks, I just literally got someone to put like a bruise on my face, a bit of blood, like the typical Halloween thing if you've got like no costume. My mate was in a bloody hot dog outfit, like a right sausage, like literally. One of my mates was in a what's it called? A leprechaun outfit. So, you know, one of them ones where you like sat on their shoulders. And all around, it was a joke night. It was a really good night. It's obviously really good to see the lads. Bit annoyed that I didn't really think about the costume because I probably could have gone ham and just done something joke. I'm going to have to wait for that next year now. So after Sheffield, headed home, went back to Nottingham on the Friday. And then on Saturday was the England World Cup final. It was the World Cup final, the Rugby World Cup final, where England were playing South Africa. And let's be honest, England just didn't turn up. They were awful, completely outplayed by South Africa. And something I read, like after they'd beat New Zealand, something I read was someone was actually talking about how potentially they've peaked and they've kind of played their final against New Zealand. And to be honest, that completely came across in the South Africa game. It looks like they were kind of not given up, but they weren't as like ready for it as the New Zealand game. Personally, I don't think in the New Zealand game they were that, like, New Zealand weren't amazing. England were good, like really good, but the fact that New Zealand weren't amazing kind of made England look better. So when they went into the final against South Africa just completely blew them out of the water. England were awful. South Africa's defence was unreal. There was no chance England were getting through at all. So I've been not brought up in a rugby background, but my uncle used to play for England. So if you've heard of him, Rowntree, he used to play for England, played for Leicester Tigers, and he's now a coach at Munster, which is in Ireland, I believe. I might have got that completely wrong, but I think that's right. So I've been brought up around rugby fans. I've been brought up around England fans. And yeah, it was a bit of a disappointing time watching that game. I'd gone home to watch it with the family because I like being with my family. I'm not going to lie, I'm a family guy. I'm that kind of person who would hop on a train or I'd get in my car, drive back home just to give my mum a hug because my mum's a G. And I also just go back to see my dog because my dog's cute as well. I love my little dog. So that was Saturday night. So I had a flight to Amsterdam Sunday morning at 6:30 in the morning. But because I was in Nottingham, I had to then drive back to Birmingham because my flight was from Birmingham. And obviously, to get a flight, you need to be there like an hour and a half, 2 hours before. So I got up at 3:30 in the morning, Sunday morning. So I literally had like 3 hours sleep that night. Got on a flight to Amsterdam, and this was a study trip for university, so it wasn't like a random thing. I went with like my group, so there was 2 of us, or there was 3 of us, there was 2 others. Went to Amsterdam to see our case study, which was the Borneo Spawnberg, which is obviously in Amsterdam, and it's kind of like a new interpretation of the Amsterdam Canal House. So if you've ever been to Amsterdam, you'd notice that obviously there's all the canals and they've got all the houses along, like kind of like each side of the canal, like parallel to each other. And this place that we were looking at was kind of like a new interpretation of that, which was really interesting. So if you are going on a case study trip, a couple pieces of advice I'd give you is pretty much gather as much information as humanly possible. Take as many pictures as possible. Before going, kind of give yourself a game plan of what you're going to do. Kind of figure out what kind of information you're going to gather, because it's the worst thing when obviously you're going abroad to see a case study. You get back and you realise, oh, I didn't take a picture of that, or I forgot to do this, or I didn't film that. Because at the end of the day, it's on the other side of the world, and you're not going to be able to go back anytime soon to see it. And it's obviously a lot of money. So definitely gather as much information as possible. One thing we were looking at was kind of like the contrast between public and private realm. So like Amsterdam is a very, very busy city. All around the canals, it's very busy. And I was actually doing some research into Amsterdam. Not like anyone's going to care what I'm going to say, but I was doing a lot of research into Amsterdam, and actually they built the canals for transporting goods to kind of like. So basically, what happened was in the 17th century, Amsterdam had a massive economic boom. So it kind of blew up. All the wealthy people moved to Amsterdam, and so they built these canals so that they could transport goods around. And basically, all of these canal houses were all like business, like storefronts. So they've all got hooks at the top of the houses. If you haven't been to Amsterdam. Where they can obviously, when the goods are transported through the canals, obviously hooks onto the hook, they can wheel it up, take it into the shop fronts or wherever they were, or the warehouses or whatever. But obviously now, because Amsterdam is so populated, it is vastly populated. They're all houses now. But I thought it was quite interesting how like the houses are so narrow, like really, really narrow. Some of the houses, like if you look at the street, some of them are like falling into the road. I don't know if that's because of them lifting the goods up or whatever, or they just couldn't build at the time. But because the area is so populated, they had these really narrow gaps where they had to build the canal houses between these kind of spaces. It's quite like high rise, not high rise, but it's like mid high rise ish. So yeah, I went to Amsterdam on Sunday. We pretty much just went to the case study. We walked around. We did like 30,000 steps or something. And it was really weird. It got to about 2-3 o'clock, and we were all absolutely knackered because obviously we'd all been up since like 4 in the morning. So realistically, you'd normally get up at like 9 or whatever. You'd go out. So for us, it felt like 10 o'clock at night because we'd been up since 4 in the morning. We're all absolutely knackered. Went back to the hotel, passed out on the bed. All of us just fell asleep. Woke up the next morning at 9, and then I had a flight at like 4 o'clock. So I was literally in Amsterdam for like 24 hours, which was fun. Kind of got all the information that I needed, gathered as much information as possible. Then I went home, chilled out a little bit, and then actually on Tuesday morning, so yesterday morning, I got on a train to London because I had the London competition that I've already mentioned. So it was kind of like presentation day. So if you guys hadn't listened to my previous podcast, basically I put myself in for this London student competition where it's universities against each other. So it was in Make London. So Make is an architect firm in London, and they've got like this foundation called the Future Spaces Foundation where they do pretty much a competition every single year. And we basically put ourselves in for it. So there was 2 BCU groups, 2 groups of 5. And we were up against 10 other universities. So we had to do this project in 2 weeks. It's very conceptual. It It wasn't like refined at all. And I'm not going to lie, some of the work there was absolutely unbelievable. One team that won, they actually designed an app. So if you actually look on their website, so if you type in Make Architects Future Spaces Foundation, I'm assuming like the examples will come up, the competition will come up. And it was absolutely unbelievable how much work some of the people had done. Obviously, it was a really good experience presenting in front of judges and different universities, obviously collaborating with different unis. It was a really good experience. But yeah, we got completely blown out of the water by the other universities. They were unbelievable. And that kind of just put it in perspective of how competitive architecture is and how competitive architecture students are, because I can't explain how good that work is. I was like, wow, it looked like a project that they spent 6 months on, not 2 weeks. They've done it in 2 weeks. This university had created an app in 2 weeks, which was unbelievable. And the last thing that I want to kind of speak about before we dive into the questions, this might be quite controversial, and you guys are probably going to click off this video if you listen to what I'm just about to say. But I'm not sure about you, but I've been a massive fan of this whole Logan Paul KSI fight. So obviously the fight is this Saturday. I'm extremely excited for it. So I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, but I've been watching Logan Paul's Impulsive. It kind of gave me the inspiration to start a podcast myself, because I absolutely love it. Kind of learning and kind of seeing a different side of someone through doing a podcast, kind of sitting down and speaking for an hour or so. I absolutely love it. I can listen to any of their podcasts and I'll be happy. Like if I'm bored, I'll probably just put on an Impulsive episode. So I'm a huge fan of Impulsive. Obviously the fight last year was a huge thing. It was the biggest event in internet history. This year, obviously they're both professional fighters. They're boxing this Saturday on Sky Sports at the Staples Center in LA, which is going to be on at like 4 a.m. for us on Sunday morning. And if I'm honest, like proper honest, I generally hope he's gonna beat KSI's ass. I really hope he does. Like, I'm sorry, I should be supporting KSI because he's the British big YouTuber, but for me, Logan is an unbelievable guy. He's unbelievably entertaining. He is very, very, very talented. He is one of the biggest entertainers in the world, and he will be the biggest entertainer in the world because he's unbelievably smart, unbelievably smart. He's a huge inspiration for me, and so I really do hope that he beats the shit out of KSI, I'm not going to lie. I've put my bets on, I've put one bet on, and I predict that Logan is going to knock KSI out in the 4th round of the fight this Sunday, November the 9th at the Staples Center. I feel like I'm like selling the fight right now. And I do apologise if you guys are listening to this and think, oh no, he's an absolute nonce. He's listening to Impulsive and he's supporting Logan Paul versus KSI. So, questions. I'm trying to get through this like not as quick as possible, but I kind of just felt like picking up the camera and speaking. So here I am. Hello. I've already said hello, but you know what I mean. Questions. Question number 1 being, why don't you show us more of your projects and explain them to us to share experiences? So this is a very, very good question. For me, it's a bit difficult now because my work is drastically different now to second year and drastically different from second year to first year. And so I've just started up my Instagram. So if you follow my Instagram, it's Tom Rowe Design, which is pretty much showing all my architecture work that I'm doing kind of along the way, and also showing snippets in like highlights of this student podcast. But I'm finding it difficult to kind of decide what to post in there because I don't want to start bringing in my second year work because it doesn't really create a narrative through my Instagram. I kind of want to keep it up to date as I'm going along. So maybe if I do a piece of work that I present, I'll then post that on Instagram. So the reason why I'm not showing you more of my projects is purely down to that, is that because my work is so different now from second year, I don't want to post like my old stuff. I kind of want to keep up to date now and kind of create this narrative as I go through the year, so I can show you my work as I go along. But I'm definitely going to do a portfolio video, like I've already mentioned, of my second year portfolio. So if you look around for that, I will show you all of my projects through second year, and pretty much just explain that. But that's pretty much why I'm not really sharing too much of my work at the moment, especially with it being like a work in progress. Obviously, none of it's finished yet. I'm only 6 weeks into the course. So I'm just kind of posting things along the way, and I hope you understand that. I'm trying to share experiences, but sometimes I have to be careful with how much information I give, purely down to the fact that, like I mentioned, my work isn't finished. And I'm kind of just developing along the way, so I'm trying to keep it to like a minimum, and then I'll definitely by the end of the year show pretty much all my work, and my work will be accessed. I'll probably have like a website or something which will have like my whole document on, or whether I'll be on Instagram or whatever. So just look out for that. But the reason why I'm not posting much at the moment is because I don't want to post half finished work, if you know what I mean, or if it's not really like a solid amount of work. Next point, or next question, how I can improve in making models. So how can I improve in making models? For me, I'm not a big model making person, if I'm honest. I have made a lot of models in first and second year. So far this year, I haven't really made any models at all. But how can you improve in making models? I think it also depends on what scale you're working at. So say if you're doing a model at 1 to 20, you want it to be much more detailed, a lot more finer. You really want to have like a good scalpel, a good ruler. Make sure that the scale is correct before you start modeling, because it's the worst thing when you're not quite sure on the scale, you start modeling something, then you realize that it doesn't work together or whatever, or it's the wrong size. And then obviously if you're doing like a 1 to 100 scale model, it's not going to be as detailed as like a 1 to 20 model or 1 to 50 model. But improving on model making skills, I'd probably say just use, if you're going to choose one material, kind of use that material throughout. Definitely pick materials that are going to reflect your project well. So for me, a lot of the time I just do everything in white card, just because I think it looks very clean, it looks very neat. You can kind of see, you can't really see the materiality, but it just is very clean. And when you're using Yoo-hoo, it just works well for me. But obviously, what's it called? Laser cutting is really good for model making. But make sure that you set up the file correctly, because you can obviously very easily mess up the file. And then if you do a laser cut and it's wrong, the pieces aren't going to come together. So I just probably just say, make sure that you're using the correct material to represent your scheme and your idea, your project well. So maybe like MDF would be a good material to indicate wood, or use balsa wood or something like that. And then use like acetate to show glass. Just the simple stuff like that. Maybe make it a little bit more realistic by having like grass and putting like stones and like gravels on and stuff. I don't know. I'm not a big model making person, so they're probably just my kind of ideas. A big question here coming from Jermaine Sully. When are we competing? So this is obviously going off complete tangent from what we've been talking about today. But competition. So when he says, well, when are we competing? He's obviously talking about bodybuilding. When am I going to be stepping on stage and competing in a bodybuilding show? Jermaine, 2021, I'm stepping in stage between the months of July and September. I haven't figured out when yet. And I think I'm going to do a junior men's physique show, not bodybuilding, because I don't think I'm big enough for bodybuilding yet. I'm a tall guy. I don't think it would be worth it, whereas I feel like I could potentially do some damage on a men's physique stage. So yeah, that's 2021, when I'll be 21 years old, stepping on stage. It's going to be fun. I'm excited. We'll see how far we go in the next few years in growing size, etc. Because I'm eating a lot of food at the moment. My strength is flying. I'm getting a lot of fat on my stomach, yes, I know. But the scale is going up. I'm the heaviest I've ever been. I'm 192 pounds at the moment. The scale is going up. The strength is going up. Life is good. I'm enjoying my food. I'm not being too restrictive. Well, to be fair, I'm not being restrictive at all with me sat here with Rich Tea biscuits. But yeah, I'll compete in 2021. I'll step on stage and I'll do some damage in front of the men's physique crowd. Next question. What other careers can you do with an architecture bachelor degree? So I don't specifically know the answer to this, so I don't know exactly what careers you can go down, but all I know is that architecture covers a vast majority of skills. So you're covering science, engineering, design, art, structure, like construction. You're covering so many things, which gives you the skill set to do a lot of other careers. You can go down many different routes of architecture. I don't know specifically where you could go, etc. But I'm assuming with an architecture degree, because it's such a tough course as well, people understand how hard it is to become an architect. So I'm assuming with an architecture degree, you can pretty much go down quite a few routes because you're developing all these amazing skills. So if you're thinking of doing an architecture degree, I highly recommend that. Even if you don't want to be a fully qualified architect, it's still a fantastic degree to have to get yourself some decent jobs and to go down some other career paths along the way. Maybe if you change your mind along the way, you can then go down and do something else, and that is fine. So I don't know the specific answer to that. Sorry, mate, but that is my answer. Did you ever think of switching from architecture to a different program? So I know that I've spoke about me questioning whether I want to be a fully qualified architect or not. However, I still think architecture is the course for me, if I'm honest. I'm saying this right now. I will most likely become a fully qualified architect because my mind changes all the time. I think my mind wanders. I go off on tangents all the time. I think about different things all the time. However, I do enjoy architecture. I'm, without flirting my own boat, but I am actually quite good at it. I've got the skill set to be an architect, and I do think that I will be a fully qualified architect in the next 10 years, next 5 years. So no, I've contemplated not becoming an architect, but I've never not thought of not studying architecture, if you know what I mean. Because I do know that I will become an architect at the end of the day. Next question, what is your favourite city in terms of architecture? Interesting question. For me, I don't think I've travelled enough to understand or to gather enough information to make a statement or to create an answer, a coherent answer to that question. But Amsterdam is beautiful. Amsterdam is really, really nice. Birmingham isn't great, if I'm honest. But I do really want to go to like Budapest. I want to go to Berlin. I'd really like to go to Dubai. I'd love to travel around a lot more. Recently, I've been traveling a lot more, seeing different places, and it's really been helping me with my studies to understand a little bit more about architecture, kind of broadening my scope on architecture, which is something I advise people to do. Definitely get out there, travel as much as you can if you've got the money, etc. But I can't really answer that question because I haven't seen enough architecture to say that. However, one thing, going to Valencia in Spain was unbelievable. That place there is unreal, where they've got the science museum, maybe, an unreal place. That's probably one of the best holidays I've ever been on. So Valencia's up there for sure. I know that's probably, maybe Valencia so far, but yeah, I haven't seen enough places yet to give like a solid answer to that. How can I get more work experience? So for me, I've only worked in 2 places, so it's not like I've worked in loads of different places. But one piece of advice I'd give to you, make sure your portfolio is clean, make sure your CV is clean, make sure your CV is packed with lots of different experiences you've done or some of your work, etc. Maybe some competitions you've taken part in or whatever. But definitely try and apply to as many places as possible. Try not to be too picky with the types of firms you want to work in, and just get your CV out there. Get yourself out there. Hand in a couple CVs a week. Just get yourself to loads of places. Just really push yourself out there. Don't stress about where you're going. And if they offer you a job, if they ask you for an interview, you go in. If you're not really feeling it, then that's fine. You don't have to go with them. But definitely make your portfolio look as good as possible. Pack it out. Make the work really good quality. Be confident in your interviews, but probably the most important thing is just getting yourself out there, giving out your CV to as many companies as possible, not worrying really who you're going to work for, because at the end of the day, you just need to experience as much as possible, especially whilst going through uni. And yeah. Next question, what can I do to prepare me for 3rd year? If I'm honest, not too much, because you don't really want to prepare yourself for something that you might not be going, how do I say this? So I definitely couldn't prepare myself for third year because I didn't know what I was going into, as in I didn't know what the modules were going to be like, so I couldn't really prepare myself. But one thing I would say is that if you're a first and second year student, definitely start reading some books, build up some knowledge in actual architecture, like build up some really good information, make notes from books and create like this archive of notes of books. Just read. To be honest, this is something that I'm coming to grips with now. This is something that I'm coming to realize now that I should have read a long time ago, and I should have tried to push myself a long time ago, and I've kind of pushed myself a little bit too late. But definitely read as much as possible. I don't have any recommendations really, but yeah, that's probably how I'd prepare yourself. And the final question is, how has the transition been between second and third year? I could dive into a lot into this. This is a very big question, which I may even cover on its own in a different podcast. But the transition has been tough for me. It's been really tough. I've been really stressed out. First and second year, I kind of felt like I'd nailed where I was going. I felt like I pretty much nailed, and I was really good with the course. I was in a routine. The ball was rolling. I had some motivation. I had some momentum. And I felt really comfortable. I felt really confident going into third year, and I felt like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to do really well. And then it kind of just hit me, and it was like everything was different. Everything has been different, which has been really good. It's been really interesting. It's kind of questioned everything, which is really something I wanted to do. I like people challenging me. So the transition has been pretty tough. It's been stressful, but it's been really good. I've really enjoyed it so far. And definitely, if you are a second year student, look forward to third year, man. Look forward to it, because it's a really tough year, but it's going to be good. It's going to be really challenging. You're going to learn a lot. Like, you're going to learn so much. So the transition's been good. I've been really engaged in third year. I've been really focused and kind of really wanting to learn, if you know what I mean. I've really pushed myself to learn as much as possible. However, it has been really difficult. I've been really stressed out. I haven't really found my routine yet, etc., etc. And on that note, I'm going to wrap up today's podcast. So I hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, I started the podcast kind of speaking about the past week or so, and then obviously I've got these questions. So if you do have more questions, just let me know. Or as I say in every episode, just drop me a question down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you listen to this on Spotify and iTunes, just message me on Instagram, or just go onto my YouTube and drop me a question. And yeah, if you want me to do any podcasts with any specific people, please let me know. That would be awesome. I do really want to get some like proper interesting guests on the show. Not even architecture people, not even design people, just anyone that I think would be really good and like a good fit for the podcast. So yeah, thank you as always for listening to the #1 student podcast in the world. And yeah, peace. Thank you.